Everyone knows that life has evolved over time, but do you ever wonder how it really happened? Evolution is a change in a species over time. A mechanism for evolution is natural selection. Natural selection is a process that is always occurring. It was discovered by Charles Darwin. Natural selection occurs because of genetic mutation, competition between individuals for resources, and differential rates of survival and reproduction of individuals of a population. If some individuals of a species have genetic mutations that make them better able to survive and reproduce in their environment, their genes will become more common in the population over time. Because there are many offspring and individuals in the population, they have to compete for resources. The ones with beneficial mutations are more able to get the resources, so they live longer and produce more offspring. Now, these offspring all have the trait that makes them more suited to the environment. Over time, they will continue to reproduce because they are more fit, and eventually the whole species, or most of the species, will have this trait. The recent history of the peppered moth is an example that demonstrates evolution by natural selection. These moths were living in England before and during the Industrial Revolution. They were mostly white with black spots, but there were also darker moths whose genes caused them to be darker. Before the Industrial Revolution, against the background of trees, the white moths camouflaged well and were more common. However, when the Industrial Revolution began, there was much more smoke and soot in the air. The buildings and trees that had once been light colors became darker with soot. The lightest of the moths now stood out, and so they were easy pickings for predators. Under these circumstances, the darker moths camouflaged better and survived longer, which enabled them to reproduce more. Eventually, most of the light moths died because they were being eaten, and the dark moths became more common in the population due to their ability to blend into the surroundings and be overlooked by predators. Once the height of the Industrial Revolution passed, the lighter moths became more prevalent again. That's evolution by natural selection. The end. Speciation. Speciation is when two species emerge from one. It is a process driven by natural selection. Speciation usually occurs when a population is geographically separated. This is called allopatric speciation. If there's a geographical barrier between this species, they only reproduce with others on their side of the barrier. Let's zoom in on population A. Population A will only mate with others in population A, whereas population B will only mate with others in population B. So if someone in population A gets a mutation that is naturally selected for, eventually the whole population will have this trait, but population B will not. And it may even have a different trait that was naturally selected for. Now there are two species where there used to be just one. That is called allopatric speciation. Let's provide an example. In Arizona, before there was the Grand Canyon, there was one large population of squirrels. They lived on either side of the Colorado River, but they could cross it easily and mate with each other. However, once the Colorado River formed the Grand Canyon, the squirrel population was divided. They could not cross over the canyon. Because of this geographical barrier, the squirrels could only mate with those on their side of the canyon. As the canyon grew and became wider, the environmental conditions on either side of it became more and more different. A squirrel in the north side got a mutation that made it have black belly and a white tail, whereas a squirrel in the south side got a mutation that made it have a white belly and a dark tail. These traits were naturally selected for. Because the two squirrel populations could not mate with each other, the black belly and white tail trait became common in the northern population, and the white belly and the dark tail trait became common in the southern population. Because of this, there are now two different species of squirrels, one on the south side and one on the north side.